and welcome to My 2 Cent. My name is Paul Emerson, and I'll be giving you my 2 cent. It's runday. It's the end of the second month of runday, and that means that it's time for a 6 mile run. So I'm gonna be heading out for a run soon. I have until midnight to do it. I run every 3 days. What is run day? Run day. Setting up YouTube. Run day is every 3 days I run to disassociate myself from the standardized system that society has established for us. So we operate using units of measurement for like miles or kilometers to navigate around the world. We use time, we use clocks to govern our day-to-day activities and work and schedule and things of that nature. And then we use calendars to map our long-term the aspects of our long-term life, our short-term and long-term goals, um, pay cycles, financial like pay cycles, chores, dates, things that need to just basically just human governance are based around certain values, and these values are not really inherently right or wrong, but they are a social science and they are meant to condition us to operate in a very specific way as members of society. And what I've come to understand is that as I moved further and further away from, as I lean heavier and heavier into identifying and addressing the adversities of institutional racism, these rhythms are meant to reinforce that component of social that these rhythms are meant to reinforce those conditions of the social sciences. So how we govern ourselves with time, how we have to pay our bills on cycles, how we get paid, and how institutions get paid from us. These kinds of interactions and influences dominate our lives and negatively infringe on our ability to be able to be prosperous and productive the way we want to be. I make I wanted to do this really cool thing where I was going to use percentages to explain my life because it would be a really interesting way to explore and explain, and then it would also be easier for other people to understand. But that's going to be too convoluted. My my monthly income from working as a forklift driver is $2,600 a month. The average, well, people say that the average African American gets makes less in on average than other groups. That's what it is. Typically African Americans are always in a position to where we have to accept lower payment, and as we accept lower payment, we wind up working more. We don't get paid the same amount. We wind up being invested in working and laboring more per week on average to sustain ourselves as just being a normal state of the reality of the world. So my current base income is only $2,600 a month. My rent is $1,300. So 50% of my rent is covered by my income if I am able to work 80 hours. If I work 80 hours, the money I'll make in the 80 hours. Hey, welcome to the stream. If I work 80 hours a week, if I work 40 hours a week, that income covers half of that covers my rent. I still have to pay for gas, utilities, insurance, food, water, sewage, basic transportation. I have to pay for my car and all that other stuff. All that other stuff has to come out of the other $1,300 that I make in a month. And that's just the reality of the world that we live in. And it's not realistic. It's not sustainable. But the thing that's funny about the way society is structured is that the average person lives off of about 30% of their income because the average person isn't earning 50% of their living expense. Like the fact that I work one job and I'm able to earn half of my income as my actual paycheck is pretty good for most Americans. You have to sacrifice certain other things in your life to be able to balance for that work life balance. What I benefit from is I go to school in the VA, I use the GI Bill, and the VA kicks out an extra $1,000 a month. That allows me to have an income of $3,600 a month to sustain everything. When I look at my bank account, I don't have any money in my account. My primary bank account is in the negative. And my secondary account, they didn't even want to release the funds so I could pay my rent. And it's like, it's always this unnecessary balancing act. And it's this projection of everything that goes wrong in your life is always your fault as a man. You didn't do enough. You didn't try hard enough. This is your fault. And it's this reinforcement in society that constantly keeps us in the state of you can't blame God for the state of the life that you have, but everything that's good in your life, you have to associate with God. Hey, welcome to the stream. Is the conflict. So I created the My02cent Life system for this. I run every 3 days to maintain my balance. If you don't exercise, you're not going to understand. But there is a thing when anybody that exercises or works out regularly to maintain their homeostasis and maintain your physical health through physical exertion, there's a thing that we understand about the nature of the body and its desire to perform that society takes advantage. Society wants you to come to work and work yourself to death and then go home exhausted. And then when you go home exhausted, that's good to know. And when you come home exhausted, then you are able to like finally relax, right? But there's a thing about the nature of the human condition that you don't have to work to become exhausted and then from that exhaustion find relief. You could just exercise. But the thing about the world is exercise is not actually exercise. Exercise is the act of playing that has been condensed down and reduced. We don't allow young people to continue to play throughout our lives. We convince young kids and young people that playing is counterproductive and a waste of time because you need to be serious about engaging in an activity that you don't want to do, right? So if you think about it, the counterbalance of the idea of work is play. But since we don't live in a society that is willing to compensate you with the resource you need to be able to sustain your household by also playing, we create this idea of work, right? So you should go fishing. I probably should, but I can't afford to fish right now. Playing is a state of mind. Playing, yeah, I can agree with that. But on the flip side of what I'm getting at is society has this unnecessary extra layer of if you're not in distress, then you're not working. And you don't have to be in distress to work. You just have to go to work, do the job, be compensated for the job so you can live your life. And it's this extra layer of this need to make everybody else feel like shit that is so unuseful, that's so useless and so unnecessary in society that's why I started running every 3 days. Because when I learned about exercising from enlisted to the military at the age of 34 and the level of peace it brings to you, it was something I decided I should just add back into my life after I got out. When the first thing I hated in the military was the first thing I learned in the military. The first thing I hated in the military was the structure, the order, the constant rhythms. Not because it was bad, but because it was counterproductive. Right? The military keeps you on this structured. The military keeps you on this schedule, and they give you the structure that they themselves don't respect. Right? Like you're expected to have all these hit times. You're expected to be here. You're expected to do all these things within a certain time frame and do this and do that and that. But at the end of the day, they're just wasting your time. Your leadership don't care. Your leadership doesn't want to understand. Your leadership don't want to respect it. Then your leadership get told to do something, and then they get half the information. You wind up engaging in a certain activity, only to get the correct information later, which means you wasted a whole bunch of your time. And so it was just this convoluted mess. But underneath the convoluted mess was an actual legitimized, coherent structure that, like, it was order. Underneath the chaos was actual order. And it was the unwillingness for us as humans to engage in the respect of the order that should have been there that created the unnecessary concept. Unnecessary concept. Dang, I feel it. But hey, depending where you are at, the license is only like $5, and you can buy like a cheap rod in real for 10. But it's definitely worth getting into, especially if you can do, I think, turnings. So the suggestion for fishing is a great idea. The biggest problem that I have personally with fishing is I don't know how to swim. So it doesn't make sense for me to get in a boat and go out in the middle of a body of water to relax when I can't swim if I fall off the boat. So I probably should learn how to swim before I learn how to fish. And that is something I would like to do, but I need the time for that, which is kind of why I'm making these videos. The My02cent Life system and the runday. So I structured runday every 3 days so that when I came back to being a civilian, the unnecessary going out into the world and working a job as a civilian, it's not that it's not fulfilling or that I needed a deeper layer of validation. It's more of a this getting up and being focused on doing this thing that I hate isn't gonna work. This isn't gonna work. I don't want to get up and go to this job. So getting up in the morning and having all of my energy focused on going to work a job and being surrounded by people that don't like me so that I can sustain a lifestyle that is not the one that I want to sustain isn't gonna be effective. So I created runday. Runday allowed me to focus. What I really was trying to do was I was really trying to, that is a good idea of fishing from the shore. What I was really trying to do was I was really trying to figure out a way to maximize on building a target audience on YouTube. And that's when Runday became like, let's record because I want to do science. My goal is to do empirical science. Real quick, everything we do in our lives is basically a science. The only part of our life that we don't engage in that will make our lives more scientific is data tracking. We don't write things down. We don't cross reference our administration of our own lives in our own homes. The things that we do at work that we don't do at home, we don't run our homes the way we run. The principles of corporate America and jobs in general have been disconnected from us as individuals in our households. And that's the biggest difference between people that are low income and poor and middle class and upper class members of society. Upper class and middle class members of society budget their life, like they run their household the way they run their job. A lot of times they run their households like their jobs because their households are an extension of their job because they are owner operators, right? So they run a job, and that habit of running a job typically just trickles down into running their house because they have to balance the assets of their house against the assets of being an owner operator of an actual job. So when it comes to the idea of empirical science, you're not tracking everything about what you're doing day to day by physically writing it down. You're just going through the motions. You have a mental note, you have a mental compass, you have a mental mindset and a reminder of what you're doing. But science is pretty great, but that's where depth charts and reading the waters as well as the terrain that surrounds you is kind of like renaissance. Oh, bro, do you do some bank fishing? But it's jacket. It must, if you go on a boat, but it leads to trails and it's pretty great walking to the spot and relaxing the bank. I am gonna definitely consider it. Like I am definitely gonna consider fishing, and I could actually fish off of the coast pretty safely. So, but back to topic. That's what My02cent run day was about, and I realized that the thing that I was doing the most consistent was running, and I was constantly trying to. I get caught in a because I don't have the time I need to develop to because I don't have the time that I need to dedicate to YouTube. I get caught in development spirals where I will write something and try to polish it 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 to the point where I never actually produce any content. It's a lot of work to put a video together to upload to YouTube. When you're already overworked, there's not really enough extra time in your day to do that. But I was able to get my channel to a point where I can go live. And since I'm able to go live, I was like, if I just do my runs, then I'll be able to, if I just record my runs consistently enough and really push toward this idea of this run day and set this goal and just keep doing this thing, then I should be able to slowly build an audience. And my channel went from having 36 subscribers for about 4 or 5 years because I wasn't putting the time I needed to into YouTube to consistently gaining about 5 to 10 subscribers a week, which is a super slow trickle, but it's progress, right? So the other side of runday, like that's kind of like what runday is, what My02cent is, and why runday is structured the way that it is, and how the data tracking for the runs correlates to me actually doing more empirical type science, right? The other side is what is the My02cent Life system. The My02cent Life system, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to all of these principles we have for measurements, the My02cent Life system it's my own standard. Um, when people once the wave of oh bro, I've not been doing anything in 2 3 years because well, I got my son and had a custody battle that I won, but took a long time. Not fast off, but I was thinking about making videos again. You should, if you could find the time to make videos, you definitely should. It's not it's not like it has to be the end all for your world, but you should try to manage your time, find that, make that work life balance. That's the point that I was trying to get to with the run day. The My02cent Life system, I created my own rulers. I created my own standards. Not to like, not because I think that the ones we have are bad or because the ones that I think there's like some deeper meaning or something like that. It was inspired by the idea of flat earthers. I'm not a flat earther, but when flat earthers started coming out as this movement, it was interesting and fascinating to me because the one big thing I noticed was that the vast majority of them were people of faith, people that believed the word of God and wanted to validate the truth of God by challenging science. And people of faith tend to want to challenge science because they don't understand it. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it is wrong. But I found it fascinating that they would always say, the science is wrong because the scientists did this. Let me change the values of the science to prove that the science was incorrect and that the scientists were wrong. And science is a discipline. Like you have to come into this, you come into science you come into the discipline. You don't change the discipline, you come into the discipline. That's why Terrence Howard, when he came out with the 1 × 1 = 2, his position is valid logically. His statements were acceptable logically, but when you test them against their own internal consistency, it falls apart. It just falls apart because if 1 × 1 = 2, then that would mean that 2 × 2 has to be the square because you have two ones. So that 2 1s times that 2 1s should give you 4 and 4. If 1 × 1 = 2, then 2 × 2 should equal 4 + 4, right? Because 1 × 1 is 2. So you have a 2, which in of itself should equal 4. The number 2 by itself should just be 4 because 1 × 1 is 2. So if you have the number 2, which consists of 2 1s, its value should be 4. So 2 × 2 should be the square, which would be 4 × 4, which would give you 16. So that's the reason why certain principles break down. But it's a fascinating idea that people like to take the core concepts of science and empirical data and then validate them and change them. And it's because belief and bias and empirical data and peer review are not compatible. So since they're not compatible, it's hard to apply a belief type of correlation and understanding to a rigid, ordered based analytical system like empirical data. The thing that fascinates me is that the same methodology and the thinking process that goes into a belief based system is the same methodology and thinking process that goes into a science based thinking. The difference is that science is built on more rigid, predefined value sets that you try to either force your understanding around, or you use to build an understanding that should match what you're experiencing, right? What I mean is that if you walk into a house and you don't close your front door should be open. So if you walk into your house and you don't close your front door because you have a memory of you closing your front door, and then you're like, I forgot that I didn't close the front door, and you go to close the front door, and the front door is closed, you could believe whatever you want, but science gives you only two values: someone else closed the door, or you don't remember closing the door, because it's the rigidity of it, right? You don't get to say that an angel came down and closed the door, or or it's evidence of extraterrestrials because you I know I didn't close the door, right? What you would have to do in the science is you would need someone else present to be like, did you close this door? No. Do you remember if I closed this door? I don't remember. So now you have to accept the fact that I must have closed the door and don't remember closing it, because this other person that's present didn't experience what happened to the door. And since they lack experience of what happened to the door, and I can't recall what happened to the door, the most logical conclusion is something of physical nature occurred. The door closed itself through the natural forces, the natural order, or I simply closed it and don't remember closing it. Like, and that's the difference between like the science and belief-based system. So as I watched Flat Earthers, I developed the different rulers, the different clocks, the different rulers, because I was like, the Flat Earthers are trying to use established science to validate and disprove what has been defined, but they don't have their own rule set. They don't have their own value set. How can you disprove a principle by using that principle to disprove it? How can you use the measurements and the units that exist to disprove the measurements and the units that exist? You can't. You need a different instrument to disprove the instrument. To prove that your ruler is wrong requires you to have your own ruler, to have your own standard. And so that's why I created the base 10 standard for distance, time, and calendar. So runday every 3 days is based on the My02cent 9 week, 9 day week. The My02cent has a 9 day week. It has a 10 month calendar. Every month is 36 days. Every even month is 36 days. Every odd month has an additional 1 day, which is 37 days. And every leap year, which I can eliminate, but right now it's easier just to correlate it to what is established. Every leap year adds an additional day zero to the first year of that month. I started using the My02cent Life, the My02cent calendar, on the 24th of January 2024. And that was my first day zero. And I've been trying really hard to track my calendar against established time, but I wind up leaning more heavily on regular time than my calendar, because no matter what, I have to correlate my days with the current established calendar until I build an actual calendar and actually have a calendar-based system that I can reliably use by tracking my activities against. Because what we do is we just follow the rhythms of our current calendar. But if I was to actually physically jot down and write everything I need to do on the My02cent calendar, I would never have to look at the current standard calendar ever. It wouldn't be relevant. It will only be relevant when someone asks me about standard information about the standard calendar. That would be the only time it would be relevant. So, so I run every 3 days because the My 2 cent week is 9 days, and every month I do a 6 mile run, which is today. This is the second month. Tomorrow will be the third month of the My 2 cent Life system, and that's basically what this is about. It's basically about mapping and charting those values to the other system. Um, what's going on in my life financially? Because I went from being homeless, sleeping in a car, to getting an apartment, to trying to work with Renessa, but she didn't want to just be a she didn't want to bring order to her chaos, which is fine. She doesn't want to change. She doesn't have to. But like I said, my bank account is in the negative. My rent is already past due for the month. I'm waiting to. I need. I have an armed forces account and I have a new federal account, and armed forces is not paying my bills. They don't want to pay my debt for some reason. They're focused on getting their money, and they're not willing to push money out to pay bills and pay debt, and everything is behind. Because when I moved to the apartment, I gave them the rent is 1330. I gave them 1330 to move in, and I gave them 1330 as a security deposit. So I gave them $2,600 on the very first month of me moving into the apartment, and that was the money I saved while I was homeless on the street. And then at the very next month, because I moved in like in the middle of the month, the very next pay cycle on the first, I gave them another $1,300. So they got $3,600 from me in less than 3 weeks. And what that did was it desynchronized all of my finances. So when I started working for Firestone and I was working for Burger King, I had everything set up. Like I was working on the weekend and I was chilling, living my life, doing what I'm supposed to do. And we try to pretend like racism doesn't exist. And I'm going to my boss at Firestone like, hey, I need to know if you guys are gonna need me to work tomorrow on the weekend so that I can know if I need to go to Burger King or not. And he was like, Saturday is mandatory. Sunday you'll have off. So I let Peter know at Burger King, hey Peter, this is going on. I can't work this Saturday, but I can work this Sunday. I should have took both days off, but there's no such thing as racism. Nobody's actually going out of their way to hurt you or change or make things difficult for your life. There's no issue with black and white people. You're just making excuses and you're not being a responsible adult. You're doing what you're supposed to do. So Friday come and Peter makes a schedule. As soon as Peter makes a schedule, he schedules me off Saturday and has me work Sunday. That Friday at Firestone, hey, Saturday is the day you're gonna have off, and then mandatory on Sunday. And I'm looking at it. I'm looking at my supervisor at Firestone like, I just gave Peter the schedule, and I can't not come to work here because this is the job that pays my rent. But I need the extra income from Burger King so that I can be comfortable. And he's like, well, Saturday is your day off, and Sunday is your mandatory day. So this is it's a deliberate conflict to hurt me, right? But this sounds like, oh, you're just making everything about you, right? So I called Peter like, hey, I can't come in because they're giving me a different schedule. But me and Peter had already had this discussion for months in advance. I had communicated to Peter months in advance what it was I was trying to do, how I was going to try to do it, and it just nobody wants to listen. Like nobody wants to understand. Nobody wants to care. Nobody wants to be a functional adult. And no matter how much you try to make good, sound, solid plans for yourself, the outer influence of the world around you is always going to typecast you like you're the problem, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. And this overwhelming energy of other people not fucking caring about you infringes on your ability to just be a functional adult in society. And that's all we should have to do. We shouldn't have to do all of the extra BS. We should be able to just communicate effectively, get communication back, and keep it pushing, right? That's not what happened. So I wound up getting fired from Burger King. I went down there, was able to negotiate getting my job back, but I can't control Firestone. Firestone refused to make it possible for me to have a stable job on the weekend. And then once I finally was like, well, I make about the same amount of money here with this one job that I was making at Burger King. I should just work the one job. They still wanted to be dumb. They still wanted to walk around and they wanted me to be a black person. And I don't define myself as a black person. I am an American. I'm just a human being that understands who I am, what my role is in society. I don't break the law, so I shouldn't have to be treated like a criminal, right? And it irritates me when people constantly want to project stereotypes on me and they get mad at me because they can't prove that I'm a stereotype. You must be hiding something, or there's this unnecessary extra level of them being suspicious or having an insecurity about my presence because they don't understand. It's not my responsibility for you to understand. It's my responsibility to come here, do my job, perform at the level or above the level, and then go home. And that's all I want to do. I don't want to play your game. I don't want to validate myself to you. I don't want you to tell me that I'm not competent. I don't want you to tell me that I'm not good enough. I don't need any of that stuff. It doesn't benefit me in any way, shape, or form for me to come here and work every day and be told that I'm not good enough and that I don't know what I'm doing and that I'm stupid and I'm dumb and I'm incompetent. I don't want to engage in that behavior with you at the age of 43, right? And I don't want to have to come here every day and validate myself and defend my ego and argue and fight with you for what? Like at the end of the day, what are we gonna gain? What are we gonna achieve because you proved that you're smarter and that you're better, that you're more perfect than I am? Am I gonna get more money from that? Are you gonna give me an extra income because you want to feel good about being better than the black person? Because I'm not interested in any of that energy. I got too much stuff going on in my life to where that part of American society is not something that I want to continue to be invested in. You tell me that there's no such thing as racism, but then as soon as I expect from you to treat me with decency and respect, you have this indirect energy of reminding me of what my position is and my status is in society. But if my position and my status in society is that of a black person, then racism should exist, right? And if racism doesn't exist, then treat me like a regular American. Why don't you just pay me the wage that I need to be able to survive, right? So, so finances is all jacked up. I can't get the I can't get the money I need to pay my rent and my bills in the present. So 2 months ago, my late fee was $1,500, and I didn't have the money, so they gave me 2 week eviction notices. I got one now because they don't want to wait. They don't want to be patient. And I kept trying to like effectively communicate and like get people to understand. And I just realized like they're never gonna care. Like the way the world is structured, no one's ever gonna change or evolve or adjust and adapt. Like the only thing you can do is you have to change. You have to adjust. You have to adapt. And that's what I did. They gave my 2 week notice, took it off the door, put it in like whatever. I will take the money when I have it. The bank don't want to manage my money. I changed my account so that the money goes into my Navy Federal account. And then I was moving the money from Navy Federal to Armed Forces because Armed Forces has the bills, but I can't keep allowing them to put the account in negative. I shouldn't have money and a negative balance at the same time. And then the first thing society wants to do is say, you're the problem. It's your fault. It's your ability to be a functional adult is why your bills aren't being paid. It's like, no, the banks should be paying these bills that I set up for auto payment on time instead of prioritizing their debt over my debt. They want their money from the loan that they gave me over the priority of this other stuff. But if they would do their job the way I asked them to, then I wouldn't be desynchronized from this dynamic of the banking system. But then I had to remember you actively and deliberately disassociated yourself from the normal operations of society. So why are you upset that the thing that you are doing is achieving the goal that you set for yourself? You don't want to operate under their schedule. and within the guidelines of their institution. So since you actually put energy into making sure that was a thing that didn't happen, and you're seeing the consequences of that, why are you actually upset? Why are you actually mad that your banking time, that the money that you're making is being synchronized from the bank? And I realized like I'm not actually upset that the money that I'm making is desynchronized from the bank. The conflict that I have is that the bank is not willing to operate on the time that I want to operate on. So to resolve that conflict, I opened a third bank account because it didn't make any sense to where they're like, when are you, the car's like, when are you gonna make a payment on your car? And I get paid the 1,300 that I need to pay my rent, but I can't pay my rent because Armed Forces is using $1,000 they get from the school to pay bills and debt instead of just paying the fucking bills and debts with the actual money that I should be using for that, right? I should get $1,000 on the first from the school, and then the check that I'll receive from that before that is the money I should be adding together to pay my rent on time. But I can't do that because they're using the second check I get in the month. This is the first check that I'm gonna get for this month. The next check that the first check that I got for this month is being used to pay the rent for last month. The second check that I get for this month is a check I'm supposed to be using to pay the rent for next month. The second check plus the $1,000 I get for going to school is the money that I should be using to pay my rent with, and then the extra money I have from the check because of the rent will cover all of my bills at the beginning of the month, which means that the remainder of that money, the 2,300 that I would have to cover the $1,300 balance and the extra 1,000 for rent for bills will cover all the rent and the bills. So at the end of that cycle, I would have X amount saved. That X amount that I would have saved is what I could actually add to the second pay cycle of the same month to project how much money I will have to put toward rent so that I can balance out what my bills are versus that, because I make more than enough for everything. It's just these pay cycles is causing things to fall. It's a fourth dimensional time, space time issue, and it's literally covered in this book. This book talks about exactly what I'm dealing with right now. So, armed forces. I mean, the car is like, when are you gonna pay on your car note? And I'm like, I was like, I'll pay Monday. I get paid Thursday. So I was like, I'll transfer the money on Thursday from Navy Federal Armed Forces, and then I can pay the car note on Monday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, waiting for the money to pin. Sunday morning, I get up, I go to work, I go to this is last Sunday. Sunday, I get up, I go to Winco to get food because I know I should have about 1,200. I'm just waiting for it to transfer from Navy Federal Armed Forces. I go grocery shopping, I get about $250 of food, and then I'm like, fingers crossed the money is gonna post. I run my card, it doesn't go through. It gets declined. It gets declined. And I know I should have at least $60 in my account, and all I'm trying to do is buy groceries, right? So it gets declined, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not even gonna worry about it. It's whatever. I don't care. It was about $200 worth of food. That number is important. So I leave without any groceries. Come home, I get up, I go to work. When I get up the next morning to go to work, I get to the job. Since I didn't get to go grocery shopping in Winco, I need to eat food, so I go to Burger King. That was last Monday, and not yesterday, but last Monday. Well, not today, but not yesterday, but last Monday. So I get to Burger King, and I'm in the Burger King parking lot, and I finally have a blowout. My tire finally blows out because I've been needing to do that for a while. I've been planning for it for a while, but I just can't get to it. Tire blows out. I called the insurance company like, hey, I need to know what the status of my insurance is. I just had a flat, whatever. Oh, we canceled your plan. It's like, why would you cancel my plan? We canceled it because you haven't been making payments. It's like, isn't it set up for 35 days? Yes. Haven't I given you more than $900 for a policy that I've only had for about 5 months? Yes. So if the payments are only like $140 and I've given you more than 6 months worth of income for the policy over the last 4 months, why did you just cancel my insurance? Oh, we haven't received the payments that that you were supposed to make. So since the bank isn't giving you the money that I have in my account that should just automatically go to you, I don't have insurance anymore. You didn't call me, you didn't write me, you didn't try to get in contact with me. No. Okay, fine. So I have a flat tire and I have no car insurance. That's great. That's a really nice, awesome thing to have happening right now. So I got on my phone, looked for the closest local tire shop. It was around the corner. I was like, well, I'm gonna find out if I got enough money before I come over there because I don't want to come over there and not have the money to pay you guys. Let me call the bank, see what's going on with the bank. I call Armed Forces Bank. I have no money in my account. And I'm like, well, how do I have no money in my account? And then I go to my supervisor and explain the situation to him. He's like, don't worry about it, because I was gonna leave. He's like, don't worry about it, just finish the day out, I'll give you a ride home. And then the next day, which was Tuesday, I had to walk to work. So that Tuesday night when I woke up around midnight, I'm like, okay, the money should post now. So I went to my Armed Forces account to check. Nothing's there. I have a negative $250 balance because instead of letting me buy food, they took the $250 out and put it toward the loan that they gave me. So my insurance isn't getting paid and my car notes aren't getting paid because you don't want to do what I'm asking you to do. I'm calling you and communicating with you and explaining the situation to you, but you don't want to care, right? So I'm like, well, how is the money not posted yet? And then my brain was like, just check Navy Federal. You already know that it's pending, but just check them anyway. So I go to Navy Federal, I check Navy Federal, money never got transferred. Never got transferred. Because I would transfer the money myself manually, but when I went to try to transfer it, they grayed out the option. I called them and communicated to them like this is the issue, and it was a me problem. It's a you don't know how the thing you've been doing for the last 2 months. You don't know how to do that. You don't know how to use the system. You're not confident. You're not competent enough to use the system, and there's nothing wrong on our end. You just don't know what you're doing. So the thing that you have been doing, you just don't know what you're doing. Because it took like 10 minutes for me to realize that they grayed out the option for me to be able to transfer the money from one bank account to the other bank account. So I was like, okay, I'm stuck. The money was there. I walked to work just to get to work because I already planned this out anyway. I already knew what the conflicts were, the adversities they're going to be. So I was just falling into compliance with systems that I had already considered. So I walked to work that day. I had the $1,200 in the Navy Federal account, and I take the car over to get the tire fixed. They charged me $60. No problem. Took the car back to work. The car, I already know that the car needs 1,200, but you have to go through the motions. You have to make plans. You have to go through the motions. So, so the solution that I came up with, I'm just gonna open up a third bank account. I'm gonna transfer all of my income from Navy Federal and Armed Forces into this new account. I'm gonna put $100 into the Navy Federal. They can continue to have a low balance because they kept messing me every month. Like, you have a low balance. You have a low balance. Of course I have a low balance. I can't manage my money. So I'm gonna give them $100 so that I won't get the report that I have a low balance from them. And then Armed Forces, I'm gonna just pay the loan to Armed Forces. I'm gonna set Armed Forces up as a direct deposit so they could pull the money from this other account to pay on the loan that I owe them. And I'm gonna just leave the account zero. I'm gonna just leave it empty. Because it doesn't make any sense why the money that I get for rent has to go to bills because you don't want to understand that I'm just desynchronized out of time. Like I don't need the extra stuff. Like it's not necessary. So, and I think they changed the way that they manage my account when I started writing checks. When I started writing checks for rent, I think that's what did it. But I wouldn't have to write checks if they would allow me to make money orders. They put a limit on how much cash I can draw to get a money order, right? And it's like that feels like that's a me problem, but it's not. It's a unwillingness of them to let me manage my own money. I should be able to pay my own bills. I, I should be able to take care of myself. I should be able to do that. Why do I have to even explain to a financial institution that I needed access to my money to pay rent? Right? Like these stereotypes about how African American men don't do this or African American men don't do that. This is what we have to deal with. I have the money. I'm willing to pay. I'm putting the energy into paying, but the institution is preventing me from just being a responsible adult because they want to put themselves before other people. You want to desynchronize yourself from the time cycle that I created. It was a deliberate thing that I did, and you don't like the deliberate thing that I did. So you have the authority and the power and the control to negatively influence the deliberate thing that I'm doing, right? So this is a long-winded conversation and rant for those of you that are watching and listening, but you can be reactive or you can be proactive. And I like to be proactive. I like to plan things ahead and think things out. And I don't like to make decisions from ignorance. And it is from making decisions from ignorance that I won't wind up with the most conflict and chaos. But since society has created this idea like your ability to have access to information is also equal to being in a privileged position, you're not privileged enough to have all of the information in the larger picture because you're not in the position or in the role of an administrator, which is fine. But again, remember what I said about science. Science is about doing the paperwork, having the empirical data, and having the evidence. If you have the empirical data and you have the evidence, you can do good science. So I want to do good science, but I don't have all of the data. The people that I'm working with that should be peer reviewing me and giving me the information I need to be effective are not doing that because their goal is to make sure that I'm not as successful as I should be so that they can define me as a quote unquote black person. I don't want to live like that. So these are the energies and these are the forces that I'm putting in place. My current goal is May 15th to this month is, I believe it's March still. No, it's April right now. It's March. This, it's March now. By May 15th, my goal currently right now, by May 15th, is to move into a slightly larger apartment so that I can change my degree program to something better. And the tools that I'm going to get from that are going to open the door for me to start doing the My02cent Life system the way that I want to do it. And that is the current long-term goal and the current plan. So this has been a super long rant. As always, my name is Paul Emerson, and I'm doing you My02cent. It's run day. It's time to go do this 6 mile.